Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of eHeroes. Today, I have a brilliant speaker, summiter, and performance expert here to share with you how you can overcome some of your fears, climb those mountains in your life, and overcome and just be more successful. So, Dave Pickles is here with me, live from England. Yeah, I'm in Pennsylvania. He's over there in that great big island over there. And this is just going to be fun. And Dave, I'm just glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here, Rob, and thank you for inviting me on.
Now, what really impresses me about you is that determination to never quit. I mean, I've looked at your website. I've looked at some of the things that you've done, and it really impresses me. I mean, you take groups of people up to Kilimanjaro and all these other summits, and it was like, wow. I mean, that to me is that kind of that ultimate entrepreneur risk-taking adventure that really, gets you to think about your life.
Yeah, so if we think about the metaphor initially, we all have our challenges and summits every day, whether it's domestic or whether it's professional. And we can actually use the idea of a mountain to overlay onto our day-to-day life, no matter what it is. You initially have the excitement or the apprehension of the day, no matter what you think it's got planned for you or you don't. And then once you get into it, once you get onto that mountain or into the day, you start to go through all those multiple emotions and experiences. You're visually hit with different things that are changing all the time. And also you are changing all the time. So your performance is changing. And that can depend on what we eat, what we drink, how our sleep was during the evening, and also generally how things are looking from a personal and professional perspective. And then, of course, once we get to near the summit, that's when the tough stuff starts to happen. And all of those extreme experiences, emotions of that day, if there is a challenging situation going on in that moment in our day, it's like summiting a mountain. You go through those fears, you turn the courage into fears into courage. You turn the self-doubt into self-belief. You turn the lack of self-confidence into being confident you will do it. Now, it's easier said than done. But once we get to the summit, that summit then just feels incredible. We're probably exhausted, but we come away from that and we start to feel that elation and feeling proud of our successes. So that metaphor exists every single day for all of us.
Yeah, I see a lot of people though, they'll get comfortable, they'll hit a plateau and they don't want to go up, they don't want to go down, they just kind of get stuck, and they cruise through life like that. And you know I noticed there's a lot of entrepreneurs after they've been an entrepreneur for about 10 years or so, they get into that comfort level. They just don't want to achieve anymore. And to me, that's you always have to think about that next mountain you want to climb.
Yes, very much so. I mean, everything boils down to understanding who we are so we can trust in ourselves, but also if we're with other people, to trust in them. And that goes both ways. So good communication, trust, understanding who we are, and having the blind faith that we're going to give it a go and just don't give up and keep going. All those things are very difficult to achieve. And being brutally honest with ourselves is actually a great start point to discover then how to instantly get over all those challenges. But if we enjoy existing in the comfort zone, what we've got to do is understand one thing: nothing ever grows or ever stays healthy if we exist in the comfort zone all the time. Now, the other end of the extreme is the fear zone. And again, nothing ever grows in the fear zone. People talk about fear saying, oh, it's all in the head. Well, actually, it's real, because if an individual feels it, then it's real. And we shouldn't say otherwise, but there's ways to get around it. So really, there's the sweet spot in the middle. That's the stretch zone. So if we feel that we are hitting a plateau, if we feel we are existing in the comfort zone for too long, then we've got to go into the stretch zone. That's not where we grow. We grow after an experience and we retreat back into the comfort zone. But that stretch zone for somebody could be walking out of their house and they haven't left the house for a year. It could be someone going onto an aeroplane for the first time ever. That's the stretch zone. That's what they're experiencing. It could be someone deciding, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to sack my boss and start my own business. That is the stretch zone. So stretch zones can happen and should happen on a very small scale, but also on a very big scale as well.
Yeah, you mentioned understanding who we are. Well, who are you? I mean, I know who you are, but explain to the audience what makes you you.
Well, I always smile when someone asks me that question, because if you were to ask my brothers or my family, they would come up with something pretty derogatory and just having a laugh at me. But as a young person, when I was born, I had chronic eczema and asthma. I was quite a poorly baby, but I was nurtured, thankfully, really, really lovingly and supportively by my mum. And I'm the youngest of four boys, so I had a really luxurious start in life in that sense. You know, the youngest in the family, you're just in this wonderful bubble and everything is great. So I think I developed a lot of my values then without realizing the things I really loved and who I was, and I was able to flourish and exist in that area. But then later on, life starts to become a bit tough. My parents divorced. It was quite a turbulent time. My brothers left home doing their own things, and I eventually found an area which I loved, which was the military. So for various guises, roles and responsibilities, I was in the British military for a number of years. I've served overseas on deployments, also served with the American military as well, Canadian, Australian, and some others, Danish as well, Norwegian, on deployments. And really, I was existing in a stretch zone for a long period of time. And it wasn't just the deployments where you start to understand more about who you are, because you have to manage yourself better, because things are ever changing rapidly, but also leading expeditions, organizing expeditions for the military and civilian alike, in mountainous areas in altitude, but also Arctic, jungle and desert, as well as mountains. So I've always been in a leadership position in the outdoors with people, been very honored to have people automatically trust in me. But then as time goes on, I have to be at the sharp end of my game to make sure I'm there ready, and also to repay that trust in kind where it's proved. So I've had to be brutally honest with myself over the years, and I've had to ask myself, who am I? And I always pinpoint that down to my DNA. What are my values? Well, I believe there are three key values that we hold as a human being, and there's several that can rotate around us, season to season, week to week, day by day, year by year. So once I got over that typical young male, which I thought was invincible, the ego was there, you live forever, all that kind of stuff, which is great at the time. I realized actually all the real stuff, which is failure is very important to acknowledge and to embrace. It's very difficult to do. So from that, we learn, and it's not easy. It's hard. You just want to retreat. When we fail, we just want to retreat under a rock and just not exist. We want the ground to open us up. So to absorb that and to understand, I actually now embrace failure. So I'll always push myself. And if I fail at something, it's like, cool. It just recognizes I'm a human being, and that's one of the greatest gifts in the world, of course, from a human perspective. But understanding that compassion, courage, determination, hope is a very important one. These values are my DNA. So I know for a fact, no matter what I'm confronted with, nothing can take away my values, the center of me. And it's those things that I hold dear to life, to other people, nature, and also to myself. So if I'm ever confused, I'll always retreat back to my DNA, and that usually gives me the answer of what I should do.
Now, you work with a lot of people. How do you overcome their fears when, like, say, you're climbing, Kilimanjaro or going to these exotic places, and they have fear. I mean, they don't. I guess it's fear of the unknown, or maybe heights too. So how do you kind of dispel them into to changing their mindset?
It usually comes down to basic instincts. So someone needs to understand that they're being listened to, especially when they're feeling vulnerable and scared and worried. Usually a hug is a very powerful tool, but it has to be a sincere hug. And on that note, I found that if you hug for 20 seconds, some people find they've never done that in their life. And it's amazing, actually, the flow of emotions you feel through those 20 seconds. But at the end, when you stop hugging, everything's better. Genuinely, it takes about 20 seconds. And you go through that, oh, I don't want to hug anymore, but keep going. So that often, yeah, yeah. And for those people that absolutely detest, they say they detest hugging. It's quite funny to do.
I wasn't a hugger for a long time, and now I'm starting to. People are coming up to me and they're hugging me, and I'm like, but I'm getting over that.
Well, that's good. It's good. I don't know, but it would be incredible to see what's going on in the brain. Like an MRI, whilst two people are genuinely hugging. It would be incredible to see the activity in the brain and what the benefits are. But also back to your question, the other thing is, love and trust. I think everything revolves around love, trust, and hope. If we lose hope is the last bastion of man and womankind. Love, well, everything's possible if common ground is met. And trust, once that happens, it's happened over a long period of time, and it's pretty unbreakable. Someone has to do something pretty silly to break it. So love, trust, and hope. The three main things that I try and instill when helping people. But it could come through an example of, I'm feeling absolutely rubbish. It's cold, it's dark, hardly any oxygen the body can take on board because of the height we're out on a mountain. Everyone's exhausted. But I see somebody, and if they're going cold, in the past I've taken off a layer and given it to them. I know that it's going to take me about an hour and a half to warm back up again. So I have to manage myself. But if I don't do that, then you could say in one sense, it's going to cause more problems for me, because I've got to then help that person and get the team around them and get them down. And it adds other complications. But really it comes from the nurture bit, which I mentioned at the start. It's, I want to do it. It's very, very challenging to be leading and helping people in tough situations. And people that generally do that are people that have natural values where it comes to wanting to help other people. And I love seeing other people happy, and I love helping other people as well in these challenging environments.
So when you left the military, did you know at that time that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Did you have something already set up?
Yes, because when I was 16, I was selected to go on with the British Schools Exploring Society to Arctic Norway, to Svalbard in the Arctic Circle. And during that time, I was there for, I think, a couple of months, 2.5 months. My small expedition was selected for me to be able to go off on my own for 4 days. So I was 16, I had a pulk with all the kit in, I had a Bergen, a ruck on my back full. I had a rifle with some rounds because the polar bears were around, and I could go off on a pre-designated expedition. And for those 4 days, it was phenomenal. I decided to scramble up a particular area, and the weather came in, and all I could hear was this sort of going on behind me. I couldn't see anything, and the rocks were getting more crumbly, and I stuck. My heart was starting to go, and I was thinking, what the heck is that noise? And it eventually turned out that it was a fulmar, which is a seabird. It's a big seabird, but I couldn't see it because the visibility was down. That was the first time I truly felt real escalating fear. So when I went back into my tent later and eventually got back and I got lost a little bit, I went back into my comfort zone. So I literally went from comfort to stretch to fear, back to stretch, back to comfort. And I loved that whole experience when I reflected on it. And these are words I'd use now. Then I just go, flipping heck, I'm glad I'm alive. So that outdoor pursuit of something different and climbing mountains, I utilized that a lot in the military. So when I left, I started working in the reserves. And so I was able to combine things much more easily by doing that. So eventually I started taking family and friends to places in the world that I'd been to before. And someone said, you should do this for a living. And I had a well-paid job. Everything was really kind of good. Everything was okay. And I remember picking up the phone to, we call it HMRC in the UK. Basically it's the tax place, IRS, I think you call it. So, and I said, I'd like to declare myself self-employed. And I put the phone down. It's like, what have I just done? So things progressed from there. And I was taking people up mountains, climbing, trekking. And to date now, over the last 23 years, I think, I've summited Kilimanjaro 61 times. I've led 14 additional rescue summits as well with other groups, and taken just over 3,500 people up and down. And it's the world's highest freestanding mountain. And within that, organised and led Guinness World Records. I've got 9 Guinness World Records to my name, all to do with obstacle course racing, fitness, marathons, all on Kilimanjaro. And now organising a group to go to Everest in November this year, where we're going for another Guinness World Record, and we're doing a marathon distance run in high altitude, and also another obstacle course race and trekking to base camp and stuff. So it just, I don't think I'm very good at anything else, Rob, is the truth.
Well, this is your superpower. I mean, this is what you were made to do. And I think that as a 16-year-old kid in Norway getting lost and experiencing that fear, that was your origin story. That made you who you are. And now you're out there teaching everybody how to do this, how to overcome, and I mean, Guinness World Records. I mean, that to me, that's fascinating. And to do obstacle course, OCR, which is obstacle course races on those mountains when there's very little oxygen, just blows my mind, because I mean, I have a hard enough time breathing on the ground. Go up in a mountain and go, yeah.
Well, it's I do like healthy pain, and I stress healthy pain, not the stuff you can pay for. But so the healthy pain bit is about discovering more of who we are. And I don't mind, going through those moments of self-doubt and just wanting to push that big red button and like, stop, I want to get off this ride, and just stop and get back and feel comfortable again. I don't mind it, because there's something naturally there, I believe, from my genetics. And my mother, so my father's British, my mother's Polish, and she came over to the UK after the Second World War. And her journey was just ridiculous. I can't even comprehend it. She was awarded the Siberian Cross recently, and she was family was all taken initially in Poland when the Russians and Germans attacked at the same time. The whole country was thrown into the concentration camps set up. Family went into one of those, then they got shipped over to Siberian death camp in Russia, and only some of the family came through. And my mum's story journey is just phenomenal. Her first memory was frozen to a guy that was dead, that was frozen to the inside of the cattle truck when they were being transported. So the origins you mentioned, it fascinated me. And my mum doesn't talk about it, but she's written a book that she's going to will to us all. So we'll see what happens there. But
Can't read it until she's demised. Yeah.
I know. Well, she can't talk about stuff. That's the reason. It's too much. But there is a book, and you're an incredible author. And I don't know if you've come across this book, but it's called The Long Walk, and it's by a Polish cavalry officer, that his journey, and went to a similar setup to my mum, and him and 9 others escaped from Siberia in the winter, got to India on foot, and it's just crazy. And that guy, I don't know if he's still alive, but he resided in the US. So when we talk about the origins, I think, there's a trigger point, but there is something, and we all need to understand where we're from. Our history, our backgrounds will never be plain or clean. There'll be dark corners, there'll be all sorts of stuff. But if we understand more about where we're from, and most of us probably don't even know beyond our grandparents, but if we do, then that's great. But we've got to understand both sides of the story, and then we understand more about ourselves. It's like the future. If we want to know more about the future, we just have to look deeper into the past, and things repeat themselves. So the fear is a trigger and stretch is a trigger to expose your genetics and expose your new you as a hybrid to where you want to be and want to go.
Yeah, and I think you're one of those people that kind of act like that conduit, and you teach others. And not only are you a brilliant speaker and you take people up and help conquer their fears, but you also do, I think you call it a different word than we do. You call it, I think, energizers, but we call it like seminars and conferences, and you teach the audience, all kinds of awesome stuff. I mean, mindset and it's just incredible, because you're taking all this military experience, but you're making it into something that the average person can understand, that helps them move forward in life.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that sort of summed it up. And this is a bit of an awakening for me listening to you, Rob, because it helps to assimilate stuff. Don't really give it too much pause for thought. But yes, all of us are authors. All of us are authentic storytellers, because every day we have experiences, and we all have the capability to really do some incredible stuff. I mean, human beings are so capable of the most wonderful, wonderful things. And unfortunately, we're also capable of the other end of the spectrum. But to translate and to communicate are very important desires and eventually skills. And there's many cultures in the world that is how they pass on their heritage and tradition. It's just by verbalizing, by talking. They don't document anything. Now, people could say, well, it's a shame, but actually it's really clever, because they rely heavily on that human touch, the human interaction. And we are a social species. We need to interact with like-natured, like-minded human beings. And of course, when there's conflict and friction, the only reason that happens is because our values are offended. It doesn't mean to say, as long as we're sensible, it doesn't mean to say the other person's bad or likewise. It's just to try and find that common ground. So when I start thinking about my first-hand accounts, some are really funny, some are just honestly just really heartbreaking, and some are just explosive, and some are just quite unbelievable because the raw nature of it. When I feel those experiences and I start to translate them, communicate them through, I'm always trying to make sure they're relatable. And really what it boils down to are the values of the people in the audience and myself. And there's always common ground that we can achieve. So communication and translating experiences to be digestible and understandable and relatable are really important. And all of them, they can never be separated into business or personal life. It is the life of that person. So we have to increase our performance by existing in the stretch zone more in our day-to-day personal and professional existence. If we do that, we are better, and those that we love and those around us become better as a result as well.
Yeah. When you descend the mountain and you finally get your groups down on the ground, what is their feeling? I mean, is it elation? Is it this overwhelming sense that they have accomplished something, or is it just, thank God I'm on the ground?
Yeah, all of that. It's
All
usually
that.
so some people may have summited, some people may not have. Now, if I could explain it this way, so a mountain we always visualize one going up, there's the point, and we come down the other side or same side. But we must always view a mountain like this. So flatten it out, the mountain's the middle bit, the summit is the middle bit. So it's one complete travelator, it's one complete road with different feelings and experiences and land masses on it. Some are tougher than others, and some are more fun than others. Laughter, cheerfulness is a sticking plaster over every wound, and we've got to do it because it bridges gaps and it's great. So when people come down, I just want to know that no one has died, no one's injured, no one's upset, and everybody is feeling a positive benefit from it. And I ensure that by being close with everybody and making sure I'm setting them up for success and informing and educating so they can take on those new skills and put them as part of their life summit tool bag, and they can pull them out when they need them. So when we come down, others, they might feel elation. They might have performed in their minds physically really well. Others might not have felt as though they performed well. But performance is really divided into physical, mental, emotional, and also, and this means different things, different people, but spiritual as well. Because when we access the physical strength, we all do that, we all know that. But then when that ebbs, it's the mental strength that comes through, and it kind of bounces between the two for a bit. But when the mental strength fails, very rarely, unless it's deep endurance experiences and hardship within that, do we ever enter into the emotional power. Emotional resilience and power is far stronger, in my opinion, than mental and physical. But if you push that even further, then all of a sudden you get these euphoric experiences that come out of nowhere. And that's what I mean by the spiritual bit as well. So those four pillars of strength, they don't necessarily happen as a result of summiting a mountain. People can experience those without and not getting to that physical summit. But when people come down, the commonality, the togetherness that everybody is shaped, no one cares. Everyone feels like a family, and everyone is loving each other. They trust each other better, and they believe more in themselves and also in the essence of hope as well. So it's a great way to find out who we are. It's a great way to be brutally honest with ourselves and not have fear about showing failure or vulnerability. And also it's great to find out what our values are as well. So a mountain strips away ego, it gets rid of all the stressors, it fills it with the good stuff, and it reforms us for that next level of decision making in our lives, personal and professional.
Do you keep in contact with the people that you take up and down?
Yeah, some, but well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people over the years. I mean, bearing in mind, Rob, when I started doing this, mobile phones, cell phones were not around. and it was landline telephone, pencil and paper. I'm the sort of person that I do a lot of stuff. I do a lot of things. I've my wife and 3 children. So when I'm not working and I'm with them, there's not much time left. So I don't always keep in touch with everyone. But what I do, I do keep in touch with a fair few. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I try to keep my phone available sometimes, but I have 6 kids, 4 grandkids, and yeah, there's just sometimes I don't want to talk to anybody. And those people that I do end up talking to usually end up in my Rob versus books because they've upset me in some way, shape, or form. But
Well,
so
that's
sometimes people will say, Rob, I don't want to bother you because I don't want to be in your next book. But I'm like, so, I know that they read the book. So
yes.
but,
Well, you touched on a really good point there, Rob. We all need our quiet time. We all need our retreat time as well. We can't have noise the whole time. If we do that for too long, I think it becomes harder when going up a mountain or having time on your own. Some people I have seen, they cannot deal with quietness, but it is so important that we do. I don't know how many people when they go outside, just when they're walking, just get good posture, get the neck and the collar, relax the shoulders, look at the treetops, and just take a couple of breaths and smile. It's moments like that which are quiet times and really important. But from a human perspective, I would say everybody needs to get out into the fresh air and just move. When we stop moving, that's when the challenges really start happening.
yeah, and there's nothing fresher than driving dry. I can't even speak. See, that's the problem. We start talking and I'm like, ah. But anyway, you can't get any fresher than climbing Kilimanjaro or Everest or going to Machu Picchu and I mean those are some out of the way places. No cell signals, no radio. I mean you're not going to be distracted by all that everyday stuff. You're going to have time to think. You're going to have time to listen to your thoughts and just kind of bond with all the people that are with you and trust you got to trust the other people too.
Yes, very much so. I mean, the books that you write, and the feeling it gives to people, it's very much about that. It's something that someone thinks this might be of interest, so then they want to experience it. And then those that read the books or those that go out and do an experience for themselves, it gives very similar things. It gives inspiration. It gives moments of relief and relaxation. It gives moments of asking questions about life, ourselves, and it puts things in perspective. But escapism is really important, and I think we should all do that as a positive disruptor every day to just escape, doing something, reading a book, being quiet, getting your boots on, going for a walk up a mountain. A balance of all is important.
Yeah, and if you're sarcastic and love humor, you're going to like my books.
Yeah.
If you're not, well, then don't ever call me again.
Yeah, that's it. And sarcasm.
And I think that's right. And for me, it was always about making someone laugh. And the more I could make them laugh, the more they're going to remember me. They're going to trust me. They're going to hire me. They're going to be friends. I've written a lot of other books, and yes, they're very educational. Yes, they help people understand a certain subject, but they weren't funny, and they're not as memorable because they just blend with every other book that's out there. But the Rob Versus series is very sarcastic. It takes all the adventures that I ever experienced dealing with lousy customer service or scammers or morons and puts them in these books, and people are like, wow, I can relate to that, or yeah, I've had a similar situation, and they just laugh about it. And at the very end, there's always a little life lesson that teaches them something. And people remember that, and they're like, hey, Rob, I need your help. And to me, it was always about that laughter to get someone to interact with me. But everybody has their own superpower. So, yours is getting them to understand that they have these mountains to climb, and you're going to be there to help them do that.
Mm.
And everybody that's listening, everybody has that unique superpower that you need to tap into. And once you do, your business will explode, because that's what you're going to be known for. So.
That's it. Yeah, really well put. I totally agree with that. And more people need to be risk takers as well. Just to dare. Life is, if we say life is 100 years, and what are we going to do? It's like a plan. It's like planning your day. You want to do what you want to do, and it's really important that we do that, because, as you said, sarcasm, laughter, sarcasm, highest form of wit. Isn't that the first part of the phrase? And some great names like John Cleese as well, Monty Python. But in terms of relating all these things into business, it's really important. Usually, it's like a hot team, hot market. Let's know more. And the greatest asset of any business typically is the human factor. It's the human element. I know we're moving into an AI age, artificial intelligence age, and it's becoming even faster and more prevalent. But we cannot forget a simple, important fact: humans are the customer,
Right.
and whatever service or product it is, we need to make sure that we listen and we communicate with the customer, because that's how we can develop things better and further for the customer. So it's not a case of, I've got a great idea, right, I'm going to spoon feed this to every single person. It's everything has to be customer driven. But if you've got a great team behind a great product or service, the only other third element is that customer. And all three are continuously evolving. And it's that physicality of experience that is the same on a mountain. You get the right leader together with the right team and the right mountain for the right reasons. And that dynamic is constantly evolving. So there's a lot of life lessons that can come from existing in the stretch zone. Maybe it could give that little spark, that trigger, to find that point of origin that you referred to, that then everything flourishes from. Mm-hmm. And being in business for yourself is never easy, but that's how we discover who we are. We need to find out the minerals, who we are. But it is a fantastic journey, and it is absolutely superb. Sorry about that.
I've been an entrepreneur for 28 years, so I know all the ins and outs, but I'm still learning. There's incredible people like you that are always teaching new people, people like me, new stuff. So how do people get a hold of you? Where do they go?
Dave W. Pickles. So on any social platform, check out Dave W. Pickles. If you want to find out even more, you can go on to davewpickles.com. So davewpickles.com is the website. Speaker, performance, adventure. That's what I do. That's who I am. And that's what I love.
And there you go. He summed it all up. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you, Dave. And adios, everybody.